This is about power. A man who feels powerless in the outside world, let's say he feels powerless in his job, can find himself trying to experience power by becoming a dictator in his own home. In fact, there's certain classic signs which are illustrated in the famous power and control wheel. Men control by isolating a woman, minimizing her complaints, exerting what they call male privilege, and also by using money and children as leverage. Now, Bill, you related to some of this. What happened? What happened to make you hit bottom on this abusive behavior and change?
Well, Nancy, my partner, issued me an ultimatum after I had an extremely abusive behavior incident with her. She said, you need to get help and change or else. And I knew she meant business, so we did some joint counseling, but then eventually I went to an intervention program, as you mentioned, Men Stopping Violence. And I learned there that my behaviors were all about the power and control that you mentioned, about abusive behavior, and that I needed to be accountable for my actions. And I needed to treat my wife as my partner, not as my property. And attitudes are hard to change, but eventually I realized that patience and kindness leads to a loving relationship, not fear and control.
I'm totally in awe of your honesty, and I think this can help a lot of people out there. Again, women are being abused as we speak, and women watching at home, if you are being abused now, there is something you can do about it. The issue of domestic abuse, it was splashed across every newspaper last year when singer Chris Brown beat up his girlfriend Rihanna. A TMZ obtained this photo of Rihanna's battered face. We're going to show it to you in a second. There it is. Look at that. Now, HLN's own Rochelle Carey is on the board at Men Stopping Violence. Rochelle, way to go. I love that. How did the assault on Rihanna inspire you to get involved in this absolutely crucial issue?
Jane, it wasn't just what happened to her as if that weren't horrific enough. It was the feedback, quite honestly, that I got, because I interact a lot with viewers. So some of the feedback that I was getting from viewers, particularly young people and women, Jane, and I know you've heard it, saying things like, well, they were just fighting, or what did she do to make him upset? And that's when I really started to key in on this in a way that I hadn't before, because I didn't grow up in a home where anyone fought. I thought that this was other people's issues. But when I saw the way that people reacted to what happened to Rihanna and other cases that have been in the news, I saw that this was society's problem. This isn't about whether or not it happens in your home, and it takes society to fix this problem. That picture, Jane, my goodness, and that someone can look at that and say, well, what did she do to deserve that? That's when I knew that there had to be something done about that, and I became more involved with Men Stopping Violence, because what Men Stopping Violence does is, you've talked to Bill, that's some of what the organization does, Jane, but also what they do is they reach out to men who are not abusers and tell them, you need to hold other men accountable for what you do.
Absolutely. Now, I want to go to you, Lester Douglas, who is Director of Training at this organization that Rochelle's involved with, Men Stopping Violence, and you're a psychotherapist. I understand you've counseled Bill and you've counseled other men. How do you stop a guy who is screaming and yelling abusively, who is controlling his wife, using money as a way to control? How do you change all those patterns of behavior? That's got to be very difficult.
Well, I think it is helpful to think about one of the primary reasons men abuse women, and that is because they can. We have learned over the 28, 29 years from men, and we're talking about thousands of men we've worked with, that men are less likely to engage in this behavior if they didn't think they could get away with it. You see? So it takes a community of men in particular to hold these men accountable. So bottom line is, if he knows he's not likely to get away with it, he will not do it. The other thing is to begin to challenge that man's belief system, because one of the messages men get about what it means to be a real man, a husband, a partner, is really the extent to which he can control women. You see? And so it is really important to note that it's not just these men who get caught. You know, for example, a lot of times we tend to want to focus on the men who enter Batterers Intervention Program only. It is only a very small percentage of men who are abusing women ever end up in